Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shore.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Charges for electricity, water and sewerage, high-vis for walkers and a ban on headphones for this year's Parish Walk were some of the issues up for discussion. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Is resurfacing the southern end of Douglas Promenade a worthwhile move? Work is due to start later this week on the project, which will see a temporary resurfacing of the carriageway. It'll be carried out in 4 phases and expected to be completed by the start of April. Is a temporary resurfacing worthwhile, or could it hinder real progress on a full refurbishment of the road? Do you worry that the necessary works to do the job properly might be put on the back burner because we've got a nice shiny road surface that we're all reasonably happy with for a while? Hey boy, I bet the majority will be moaning about it. Do it right once and for all, says G. Yeah, it's just that would be a big job, and I've driven up the northern end of the prom a couple of times recently, and I have to say it is a huge improvement and at very little cost as well. Now, whether or not the whole thing is going to crumble into the sea, because we have been told by the department that they need to do the job properly, get down into the foundations and renew all the pipes and things underneath it. So it is just putting that off maybe. But, you know, on the face of it, I think it cost 50 grand, the northern part of the prom, and I think that's money well spent, personally. Brilliant news. I went down there on Saturday on my scooter, and it's now downright dangerous. You have to weave around the worst bits, says Paul. Yes, I think you're probably right. I think I'd be a little bit nervous of going down there on the motorbike these days. Let's go to the lines. We've got Buster on. Hello, Buster.
Yeah, I mean, I seen it last night on the telly, because obviously I can't get out, but to me, the temporary job looked absolutely excellent.
Yes.
Now, you know, fine, crack on with, you know, the 4 phases and get it all done. Crack on and get the scheme, the £21 million scheme, get all the approvals for that in place, but just put that on the shelf.
Yeah.
And say, right, okay, let's see how long this temporary repair is going to last.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because, you know, if it does start to go, we can go straight to the scheme.
Yes.
No messing about, no consultation or anything else. We can go straight to it. Because, and this is another issue, on the sewers, I was involved with letting of one of the apartment blocks, and the main sewer got stuck. So we had to kind of dig down and put a camera down the main sewer. And Stu, I'm not kidding you, it was in perfect condition.
Right.
The amount of sewage that had flowed through it was shining like a sixpence. And there was no doubt. I mean, we went 20 metres either way, and it was perfect. And one old guy said to me, he said, you know the reason why, son? I said, no. He said, well, there's no trees, first of all, to try and get in through the roots. There's no vegetation. And he said, that sewer, when it was laid there, he said, you guys won't put a foundation in like those guys did.
Right. The Victorians knew how to build pipes and plumbing and stuff, didn't they?
Yeah. You know, and, you know, it's very rare do we ever see anybody on the promenade doing any services work. But yeah, my view is get the £75,000 schemes, get it in, get them done, get your approval for the big one, and then just let's wait and let's get our money's worth. I
think that's a great idea. Well, on the basis that it's going to cost something around 20 million quid to do the job properly, compared to the 120,000 to just do a temporary fix, then if they were to stick that 21 million quid in an interest-bearing account somewhere, they might get 10 bob a week back in terms of interest, because I know the rates aren't very good. But, you know, it could all maybe accrue a little bit so that, like you say, when they do need to pull the trigger on it at some point, then, it might even have a few more quid in the pot.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like kind of what I would do with my money. I'd say, well, hang on, I've spent that much. Let's see how much I can actually get out of that.
Yeah, good thinking. No, I fully agree with that. I think that's a great idea, Buster. Okay, thanks for calling in. If anybody else has got a point of view about this, I think that's a great idea by Buster. You know, we've been told that we need to do the proper foundations job, 20 million quid, spend fortunes and all that. Well, all right, let's get all the planning permissions and things in place to do that. But let's just see how long this temporary fix lasts for. It might last for 10 years or something like that, mightn't it? So it's 10 years of accrued interest. Maybe, I don't know whether or not governments can work like that, but the theory is good so far. What do you think? What about the rest of the roads on the island, says Alan? 75,000 would fill a hell of a lot of potholes elsewhere. We're going to get the prom resurfaced anyway. The DOI need to get the blinkers off and look at the big picture. The island's roads are in a disgraceful state. Thanks, Alan. Stu, I think the resurfacing of the prom is a very good idea, even if it had to be done every year. It would take rather a long time to use up the 21 million for the proposed major roadworks. We have no money to do the repairs properly, so this is a great solution. Thanks from Christine. I wonder why they don't do the old chips thing, though, because it's just black tarmac, I think, the northern end. I wonder why they don't do the tar and chip thing, which I thought was better for grip. I don't know. Robin Peel called, talking about the prom. Last night's country file showing the horse trams and stables was excellent. Wasn't that the Isle of Wight? It was a really good advert for the Isle of Man. They should definitely keep the horse trams. Whilst I agree that the road surface is far better than it was, it isn't very appealing to the eye, the way on the centre has been done, and it would be good to see it extended to the sides. The walkway, however, has bubbled up even more since the road was redone and is more dangerous now, says Michael down at the Wellbeck. Okay, keep your thoughts coming in. Prom, do we think it's a good idea to do this patch job, or do you think it might be a waste of money, given that at some point they're going to have to do the big job anyway, the millions and millions scheme? And I thought that Buster's idea was a good one. Let's get everything in place so that they can drop on that, give them 6 months' notice, say, without having to do any more consultations, no more planning applications, no messing about. But let's just see how long the temporary job lasts, because people are guessing that it's on its last legs and it's all going to fall into the sea. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's still going to be there in 20 years and they can just keep on dressing the surface. Who knows? Keep the money in the bank. Stu, all roadworks are temporary, get on with it. I suppose so, yeah. And 10 years of further erosion, also the price of everything gone up, so it'll probably cost twice as much to get it done, so let's get it done now, says Dave. Okay, that's a point of view. The newly applied road surface was really good when first applied. I use it every other day, but I'm starting to feel it sagging a little in places. Ah, right, okay. I'd wait to see how the first tarmac section wears before spending more money on another temporary fix. That from Keith. Okay, Keith, I will take silk on that from you, and yes, if you use that on a regular basis, then you've got a much better idea than me. Hey boy, what's our vehicle tax going towards? Does anyone actually know for sure 100%? Here's me thinking it's to go to fix the roads, etc. Duh, says G. It does. It all goes to fixing the roads and more from government. The road fund licence is insufficient to fix all the roads, so the government has to put money towards the amount raised. But it's not going on pensions or anything like that, as far as I can see. Anyway, maybe the new minister has a great idea of mixing asphalt and concrete. He said in that clip that he played, it'll last longer. But what about the ride quality on the road from Sulby Bridge to St Jude's Crossroads? Or the road from Sandyway to St Jude's, or the road from Andrews to Bride. No ride quality in those roads when you drive a 4-axle wagon, twice the bounce. Cheers from Angry Dave. Well, maybe you're going too fast, Dave. Can you go too fast? I fully agree with Buster. If you do the sums, we can resurface the road for about 190 times for £21 million. That's kind of not what he was saying, but yes, that is a point of view, certainly. Douglas Prom, the longevity depends on the thickness of the new tarmac. Obvious, says Doug. I'm not a civil engineer, so I don't know quite how it works. I would have thought that if you put it on too thick, it would all start to sort of fold up on itself, but I'm not a civil engineer. The clowns in DOI now don't know how to make roads, says Brian. Oh, okay. Stu, you just mentioned renewal of the pipes and service under the prom. Are we not paying for this work anyway through toilet tax and the like? Shouldn't the likes of gas be paying for their own infrastructure as they're charging for it, say with telecom and electric standing charges? Seems to me like we're paying the point of use for the infrastructure and being told our taxes are paying a second time. That's a fair point, although I'm guessing that the government needs to sort of provide the big pipes under the promenade that then the other utilities use. So they're providing the sort of the real estate, I suppose. So that's what we've got to pay for. And then I expect that the utilities have got to put their own stuff in. which they then directly or indirectly charge us for. So I don't necessarily see a big conspiracy theory there. All right, yes, sir, my driveway needs doing. Can you put a word in, please? No. Let's go to the lines. We've got Mac on. Hello, Mac.
I'm just wanting to know, from Sulby School down to the village, in the morning when the children and women are walking up the road there, they've got to stop because there's big pools of water right along the pavement there.
Yeah.
You know, and up at Sulby Glen there, they done all the road there from the filter house to Old Sulby. But when you think about it, I mean, it's all starting to break up.
Ah, right, okay. So you think that they ought to be doing things around the island rather than concentrating on the promenade?
Well, I cannot understand it really, because years and years ago we used to see a man coming with a proper steamroller and tar and proper chippings, and it lasted forever.
Yeah. And is it a bad drainage problem then in Sulby if you've got these big pools of water that people have got to walk around?
What it is, I don't know much about it, but I think it's just like sinking along the pavement, like. Right.
Okay.
You know, if you're coming into Ramsey in the morning and you see people walking, like, you're all right if there's nothing coming towards you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
If you've got to stay into the curve, I mean, if you don't slow up, you're just wetting the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, hopefully somebody at the DOI will have heard that and we'll be having a look at it. And Keith says, what about the upcoming road closure on Bucks Road for gasworks between Rosemount and Domain Road for 3 weeks? Another nightmare. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that, you know, we all appreciate that they've got to do roadworks from time to time, and we all moan when they don't do any roadworks, so we can't really moan when they decide to do them. There's always going to be an amount of inconvenience, and to be honest, I would think that diversions in that area around Westmoreland Road or whatever would make it reasonably straightforward. Stu, the whole island's roads, drains are knackered. I remember good roads 30 years ago. We've got more money now. Oh, no, I've got more money now than we had 30 years ago, have we? Maybe, I don't know. We've had loads of money, certainly, but quite where it went, well, hospitals, clearly, and all sorts of airports and things. Yes, whether or not we've got more money than we had 30 years ago is maybe a moot point. Road between Colby and Ballabeg, recently resurfaced, still has pools of water, regards from Tom. I think we've got a drainage problem. I really do, because Richmond Hill, every time it rains, ends up with sheets of water across it, and that's a new road. I've seen a number of roads on the Isle of Man, especially these newly resurfaced things. Brandish Corner, I think, was another one, and Windy Corner was another one where, you know, if you got the wrong sort of rain or whatever, you get floods of water across it. Regarding road tax, paying for repairing roads on the island, I may if all car owners would renew their road tax, but a large number of car owners ride around without any tax. And the cops aren't interested, apparently. I would dispute that.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is a freeze on electricity charges to be welcomed? Manx Utilities yesterday confirmed its charges for the coming financial year. The headline was a freezing of electricity charges, but one figure which is bound to cause consternation is the 6.4% hike in the water rate. There's also confirmation the sewerage rate would go up to 98 pence in the pound as approved by Tynwald in December last year. Is the freeze on electricity charges to be welcomed, or will the increase in water and sewerage rates wipe out any benefit from that? Let's go to the lines. We've got Ken on. Hello, Ken.
Just a report in Peel. I've got the old tin bath out in the backyard, and it's collecting all this free water that's arriving.
Marvellous.
Right. Our old hobby horse of mine, this. Talk about the election, you know, change. What's changed? They just followed suit. How much thought's gone into this? You know, the Water Authority is paid off the electricity debt. Your man, doctor, is, you know, new to the job. He says about the standing charge, kept electric down, standing charge is lower than Manx Gas, which is incorrect, I must add. I only pay £60 a year for Manx Gas.
Yeah.
After fighting with them, because I pay slightly higher gas, but the lowest rate for the standing charge. But getting back to the water, you know, why didn't they see sense and say, you know, why don't we use the average rather than the rate in December? I'm glad they didn't use January, which was 6.9. You know, RPI. Why didn't they use CPI?
Well, I'm guessing that, I mean, not to answer that particular question, because I don't know the answer to that, but except to say that they'll always choose the figure that suits them best. But, you know, the new administration have inherited the same problems that the old one had, and the same sort of executives within the authorities, haven't they? So, you know, you can't really expect, I don't think you can expect whole different approaches to things.
No, but I'm saying they could have used the average or waited off until they see they have to do it by the end of March or something. Which again, this notice, this increase in electric, unlike the sewage, doesn't have to go to Tynwald.
Right.
Which perhaps it should do in future years.
Maybe.
But, you know, why didn't they, you know, use the average, which is only 4.5 or something, I think, for the year. But use the rate in December. Yes, if the rate had gone down to 5%, what would they have done then?
Right.
You know, in finance, if they're using that and they're at rate of inflation, they're building that in, what happens if RPI would have gone down suddenly in December? Yes, would I be complaining? But they might have said, well, we can't use that. We'd have to use the average.
Yeah, price of licorice, anything. Yeah.
You know, I'm just so annoyed about the water. You know, yes, we can't go back into history about, you know, the power station death. But why, you know, what's the report going to say about the finances that's supposed to be coming out sometime? The Treasury Minister mentioned on the Sunday programme.
Right, okay.
And I questioned him, you know. Nobody's got any answers. Yes, Dr. Allison says all government should use the same rate of inflation. But, of course, they don't use that for civil service pay rise.
All right, Ken, thank you very much for your call. Some points there that people might want to comment on. Text, smoke and mirrors at work again. Are the rates the best way to go for past mistakes of the Isle of Man government, where a single person pays the same as a house with multi-amount of adults living in the same place? That's something that comes up quite often, isn't it? Hey boy, typical millionaire MHK telling the poor that it's not that expensive for water. Not everybody's as wealthy as them, and not everybody's going to be voting some back in again. Opinions from Frank. Well, it's kind of you to actually suggest that it's an opinion, Frank, rather than a fact. Once again, I have to ask, can I have a water meter, says David. Well, it would certainly seem fair, wouldn't it? Is this a case of the MEA debt hiding behind the old water board again? We all need to drink and go to the loo. We can use less electricity. That's a good thought. I mean, I have to say, in terms of water and sewerage and stuff, I would have thought that most of the infrastructure had been in the ground for both services, freshwater and wastewater, for 100 plus years. So it must have been paid off decades ago, you'd have thought. Now, obviously, they need to renew stuff and they need to do maintenance and all the rest of it. We understand that. But, they've had donkey's years of not having anything major to do, you would have thought. All right, there have been some new estates built, I suppose, Governor's Hill, Ballawattleworth and places like that. My understanding, though, is that the developer has to put all the drains and the water supply in up as far as the nearest main road kind of thing. So I don't suppose that as a cost necessarily falls on the water board. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to be sure. But you could kind of think, well, what's gone wrong? Supposing that they've had 100 years use out of the old water station. I know that the water treatment plant's been renewed and replaced, but if they had 100 years use out of that, then they must have amortised the cost of that donkey's years ago. So all the charges that people have been paying for the last 100 years, where have they gone to? Have they been declaring dividends? Have they not been charging enough money? What? But the government won't be using RPI when it comes to giving us government workers a pay rise. I pay 7.0314 per kilowatt hour for gas and 16 per kilowatt hour for electric, and electric standing charge is 4p a day more than gas. So how does Dr. Allinson come to the conclusion that per year the gas standing charge is more than electric? Says Jan. Dr. Allinson is wrong. Our water is the dearest in the UK. We use a vast amount for livestock on the farm and it's a major input every year. Why is it so expensive? Water users shouldn't be paying for the MEA loan day debacle, says Neil. Fair comment. My sister lives across in Luton. We recently compared bills, and our water with no treatment is 20% more, our electric is 40% more, and our gas is 200% more. They say it's because of debts from the past, so shouldn't the people that messed up and got us into debt be made to pay for their mistakes, says Dave. Well, if only the world worked like that, wouldn't it be great? Hey boy, how can they expect us to pay top dollar for water if there's plenty of roads leaking where water mains are, etc.? I see plenty when driving about, says G. Well, I see plenty of flooded roads, but I think it's because rainwater doesn't drain properly off them rather than the fact that they're leaking mains. Manx Public's being fleeced. Water Board was in profit amalgamation with the MEA, but we're being screwed. Bell and Tier have a lot to answer for, says James. So on one hand we get a lift in tax relief, on the other hand price hikes in the necessities. Well, wasn't that always going to be the case? Did we actually expect to be any better off? Once again, remember, if the bill using the meter is less than the amount using the rates calculation, then they disregard the meter calculation and charge the higher amount. What incentive to use less water is that? That from Stuart. I'm disappointed that Alex Allinson appears content to kick the iniquitous disparity between consumer price index and retail price index into the long grass for a review in due course, as long as government revalues what it pays out using the lower CPI, but persists in increasing its charges to the general public using the higher RPI, the immoral rip-off continues. Can Alex and the Council of Ministers really attempt to justify that disparity? That from John W. Thank you. And also, Stu, fitting a water meter won't make it cheaper. You'll be charged whichever is the highest meter or rates. Either way, saving water won't save you money, says Neil. Okay. Water charge is grossly unfair. Where there is low occupancy in a large property, owners should be allowed to have water meters installed so they pay for the water used. I'd happily pay for one to be installed, but they won't allow it. Why? We're paying for the reservoir at Sulby and the water treatment works at Sulby, also the service reservoir at Glen Aldin, says Joe. Well, fair dues, it's all part of the infrastructure. Are you saying that that's why the charges are so high, because they've had a lot more work to do? Rain doesn't cost a penny. No, it doesn't, but sort of collecting it and cleaning it and all the rest of it does. So, Stu, it doesn't make sense these days to have all our water going through an expensive filtration process when very little of it is used for drinking, but goes straight down the sink and toilet, says Jane. That's a good thought, actually. You know, we do, all our water is presented to us in a consumer, do they call it potable water? I think they do. And a lot of it doesn't need to be stuff that's going through your washing machine and stuff, as long as it's clean, I suppose. It doesn't have to be clinically clean. Need to do something about salaries of MUA management. Highest paid workers in the Isle of Man. Make up their own figures, says Steve. Do they? Do they really make up their own salaries? I'd like a job like that. I'd give myself a big pay rise every day. I really think the island is taking massive backward steps for the average earner. There's only around 2,300 quid benefit in regards to income tax rising on the island now. What? But with the cost of living going up and the lack of public facilities, what is there to encourage people to move here, or even younger people to stay here? Well, it's not always just down to money, is it? It's not that they can blame it on the cost of getting it here, I suppose, in terms of water. Like everyone else who rips us off does. Yeah, okay. Just wait to see the big increase in the water charges after 12 months and all the big increases that there are on the way next year. Alf Cannon's budget, jam today, you'll be poor tomorrow. Oh, jam today, you'll be poor tomorrow. Dr. Allinson is totally wrong with his figures. Same old numpty excuses as the last lot, says Dave. When this merger came about, my wife said you never mix water with electricity. It's a disaster, and she was right. The thing that gets me is this loan that was taken out years ago. It should have been looked at then. Somebody should have been held accountable. But I do think it's wrong that there are still people retiring early before they're 65 from the electric board. That's got to stop. If you work for a company that has a huge debt, you shouldn't be able to take early retirement. I think they're obscuring the truth. At the end of the day, it's the taxpayers who have to pay for it. I don't like pay rises for government workers, but if they're going to increase the charge by 6%, then surely they should use the same rate of inflation for pay rises. They shouldn't be allowed to use one for one thing and another for another. It's inevitable that charges for water are rising. As said earlier, the electric was milked as far as it could be, so join up 2 units and pump up the price of the water to get themselves out of bother. Again, the taxpayer's been hoodwinked, says Howard. 1 minute our rate of inflation on the Isle of Man is 1.8%. When it comes to increasing the water rates, they decide that they're going to increase the rate of inflation to 6.4%. says Michael. Domestic rates being increased by as high as 14% in some cases. Sewerage charge up 6.4%. Water rates now up by 6.4%. Dr. Allinson says, what about those on low incomes? He avoided the question put to him. He then went on about investments in the infrastructure. What about the MUA debt, etc.? That from Michael. Comment from Steve. He says, the island is a fantastic place to live, but unfortunately the government's making it unaffordable to live here. We don't want to, but we are considering selling up and going, says Steve. The only thing I would say, Steve, is that there is a cost for all the things that we really enjoy about the Isle of Man. They do come at a cost, no two ways about it. And you could sell up and move, and you could probably buy a whole street of houses in Salford or somewhere like that for the price of, a rundown flat in the Isle of Man. But would you want to, really? Would your quality of life improve by that? I remember one of the very first reporting jobs that when I first joined Manx Radio's newsroom in, 2002, 2003, I interviewed Pam Crow, who I think was DOI Minister at the time, or the equivalent of, and I made that same point. I think we'd got a story about the price of stuff in the island, and I said, listen, you can buy a whole street of houses in Salford. I'd just seen a thing on the telly where you could buy houses for like a couple of £1,000 each, old terraced houses that nobody wanted anymore, Coronation Street type places. She said, well, yeah, but, if that's what you want, then fine. But, you're not going to have all the benefits of the Isle of Man if you want to live on a back street in Salford somewhere. And she's quite right. We'd all like to live in Kensington, but at Kettering prices, I suppose. So, people who say, it's too dear in the Isle of Man, we are paying a premium price for being in a premium place is maybe another way to look at it. Stu, how about having a synchronised toilet flush in protest, says David H. Bob called, if I remember right, the Manx water was fine, its accounts were okay. When this merger took place, everybody said it would be used to pay off the electric or raise more money, and I'm sure it's come about. Everyone said it was a con, and that seems to have come to fruition. Fair dues.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should high-visibility clothing be compulsory for walkers? Safety was one of the key aspects of a special Manx Telecom Parish Walk event last night. A panel of experts offered training, nutrition and other tips to competitors. With spring bringing increasingly longer days, many will be looking to start the training ahead of the big day in mid-June. Race director Ray Cox is urging people to be seen on the roads, particularly with black sports clothing so readily available.
Indeed so, but of course it's very fashionable, it's the in colour, and so many people wear black sporting gear, but really for training and night time, a simple high-vis vest over the top, very lightweight, doesn't interfere with your training at all, comfortable to wear, not expensive to buy, and certainly not expensive in light of perhaps saving your life.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. If you're out on the roads, you should be wearing high-vis, I think. What do you think? Should wearing high-vis clothing be compulsory for walkers? Could be compulsory for school children to wear high-vis, certainly during the winter. The school clothes are dark, and the amount of children who just step into the road without thinking because they're on the phone makes it dangerous. Good point, thanks for that. And we've got Wilf on as well. Hello, Wilf.
I was driving this morning, so I couldn't sort of ring, but I heard all about the yellow vis and all that.
Oh, yeah,
I'm all for that, that's fine. Day and night, that's fine. But I just wanted to bring up another safety point for walkers. Now, walkers are told to walk facing the oncoming traffic.
Yes.
But on a right-hand bend, they must be told to cross the road.
Okay.
I have met them on a sharp right-hand bend, well, one in particular, and his only escape was to jump into the hedge, because I didn't know he was there. Obviously, he couldn't see me coming.
Right.
They must not walk on the right on a right-hand bend.
Okay.
That's their right-hand bend, my left-hand bend.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think
There's
so,
no
yeah.
escape for them.
Yes. Yeah, and they need to face the traffic so they can see what's going on, yeah.
Exactly, but they must go across the road on their right-hand bend.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, yeah, a valid point, but you agree with the idea of the high-vis. Thank you very much, Wilf. Some more comments about that came in earlier on. Compulsory high-vis for pedestrians. They should also wear crash helmets, as statistically pedestrians have more head injuries than cyclists, as do drivers. Should also pay road tax for all the pedestrian crossings. Start focusing on the things that will make the biggest difference to vulnerable road users' safety, and that's driver behaviour. Why are you not talking about it? Well, we are now that you've started talking about it. driver behaviour. But, I mean, at least drivers have got to be tested and examined, and they've got to be trained and all the rest of it. Somebody going out on a push bike or walking on the roads hasn't got to have any sort of licence or training at all. So, my sympathies are often with the motorists as far as that's concerned. I'm glad you're covering this high-vis thing. It's the people who walk with the backs to the traffic need education. I drove past a woman going up the Glendarroch Road last week. She was walking with the back to the traffic with headphones in her ears. If she got hit by a car from behind, she wouldn't have a clue who or what had hit her. And that's from Dave. Thank you, Dave, who's angry, apparently. Anybody or anything on the road should have to wear high-vis, be it pedestrian, bicycle, horse or motorcycle. Be safe, be seen. Does that mean I can't wear my cool sort of motorbike jacket, though, when I'm on the motorbike? Do I have to be bright orange? Day glow? Not sure about that. I wanted to look like Marlon Brando. That's never going to work either, is it? Stu, you do look like Mr. Brando, unfortunately for you, like when he was in his 70s, says Cleo. How very dare you? The horror. And Marlon Brando's been worm fodder for years. Surely you don't want to look like that, says JC. On the waterfront, I mean, the good old days. Afternoon, Stu. Yes, I agree with high vis, but are we not moving the responsibility for the road onto the pedestrian and taking it away from the motorist? Just a thought, says Gary and Ramsey. Well, yeah, but why should the motorist be responsible? Because they come around a corner in the dark and they can't see somebody who's dressed all in black in the middle of the road. So surely we do need to put the onus on the people who are using the road, don't we? Oh dear, the high-vis brigade are at it again, wearing fluorescent bibs for just walking around. The nanny nonsense that people want to impose on us just boggles the mind. This is not some great problem of a constant stream of death that justifies any of this hysterical nonsense. Some of us are capable of taking responsibility for ourselves when we go out in the big wide world. If such types think that they've got a right to impose their stupidity on the rest of us, then I suggest that they just stay indoors and the rest of us get on with normal life unmolested. My message to these fools is to get a sense of proportionality about such minor things and not extrapolate normal activities to a very improbable worst of the worst case scenario order to try and justify their ridiculous ideas. Bit strong, Mark. I think that wearing high-vis if you're walking out in the dark is not a bad idea. Sorry. Stu, high-vis jackets on roads. Is this because the driving public can't see properly? Perhaps regular eye tests should be done annually. This would cut down on a lot of accidents. When they are in an accident, they say, I didn't see them. Perhaps they're not being truthful. I don't know if it's that. I think that people do tend to wear dark clothes and do things that involve them being in the road. I think that's a bad idea. Mark says a caveat, perhaps, Stu. I was referring to the contributors who wanted high-vis during the day as well. Oh, well, that's all right then, Mark. I thought you were getting a bit extreme there. Yes. And John says a similar thing. Judging by the daylight running lights, trite, we'll all soon be walking around with an illuminated traffic cone on our heads. It's cobblers, says John. I always thought that those daytime running lights were a step too far, to be honest. Look at me, I've got my headlights on. Traditionally, highways were used by people on foot or horseback. Sometimes later cars came along, so motorists are the ones who are having to share the space, according to Andrew. Absolute nonsense, ridiculous. Roads for cars.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
We touched on this yesterday when discussing high visibility outfits for walkers. But should walkers also be stopped from wearing headphones while out on the roads? A ban on headphones is going to be enforced during this year's Manx Telecom Parish Walk. Is this a common sense move, do you think, or might it put you off taking part? There was never any chance of me doing the Parish Walk. But I have to say, if I was to consider it, I'd want to have some music going, Staying Alive by the Bee Gees or something that's got a bit of a walking beat to it. I mean, if you're a walker, do you enjoy having a bit of music on that gives you that kind of that walking beat? I would have thought it would be quite pleasant, actually, apart from the walking bit, of course. Parish Walk. The solution is simple. Walk the parishes with headphones, but without entering the Parish Walk. That from David H. You see, insurrection starts that way. How many walkers are we going to see now carrying boom boxes? I presume none. Presumably not wearing headphones is so that you can hear what's behind. So does that mean that deaf people aren't allowed to do the Parish Walk, says Rich? I see what you did there, Rich. Yeah, you're taking that to an illogical conclusion. But yeah, it's a question, I suppose. Hey boy, I think it'll put a lot of people off from actually doing the Parish Walk. What next? No ice cream in the summer, says G. Well, ice cream, can you walk safely? Can you negotiate the roads? whilst carrying ice cream, because let's face it, you have to look down to see where it's dripping, where it's melting to. And at that time, you might get annihilated by a big truck or something like that, mightn't you? Earphones and headphones during the Parish Walk, not allowed this year. What do we think about that? Good idea or not? On the face of it, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you're out on the roads and you do need to keep your wits about you in terms of approaching traffic, and your ears are probably a good tool in helping to do that. So if you've got, I don't know, Queen or somebody like that rocking your eardrums out, then you're not going to hear an approaching truck. So on the face of it, it seems like a good idea. But there's a part of me that says, hang on a minute, we are all responsible for ourselves and for our own safety. And if I think I can walk along a road with a set of headphones in, listening to Pink Floyd's Finest, then who should tell me that I can't do that? I take responsibility for myself. I don't need to be spoon-fed with all sorts of rules and regulations. Where do you sit within that spectrum of responses? While out shopping on my mobility scooter, you wouldn't believe the amount of times I come across people with earphones in, and I can shout at them to ask if I can pass them. They don't hear me. P.S. I'll do the Parish Walk on the buggy. I wonder if that's Michael. Regarding the headphone thing, what a load of horse dung. Oh, right. What's my Walkman for, then? Okay. Stu, the ban on headphones in the Parish Walk is an essential safety measure. To me, it's not unlike using a mobile phone when driving. If you can't hear a vehicle and step out in front and cause an accident, it'll be the driver who would have to live with it for the rest of their lives. While I'm on, bus drivers should also be banned from using them. Some do wear them. Right, okay. Yes, I don't think bus drivers should be allowed to wear headphones while they're driving. Robin Peel says there does seem to be an increase in people out walking, training for the walk, especially on Saturdays. But there's so much more traffic on the roads now than there was when the Parish Walk first started. I know people want to listen to something to stop from being bored while walking for a long time. But people need to be aware of the traffic, especially with the likes of electric cars on the roads now, which you really can't hear. That's valid, yeah. Many parishes are aware, but so many people wearing headphones are a real menace, oblivious to their surroundings. That from Sue. Is it Big Brother, says Rusty's dad? Well, that's an interpretation on it, isn't it? I wonder if this changes down to insurance companies. They must need insurance to hold race walks, so have the insurance companies added a clause about this? I don't know. It's a good thought, though, isn't it? Conspiracy theory, you see. It's big business that's behind everything that we're not keen on. Like I say, on the face of it, it seems like a good common sense idea, but a part of me does kind of resist being told what to do, especially if I've been... I mean, if I'd have been... perish the thought. If I'd have been a keen walker for years and years, and I enjoyed sticking the Walkman, earbuds in or whatever, and going off and pacing forth, I'd be a little bit miffed about this, I suppose. So, and we've got Peter on, who I think wants to talk about the Parish Walk and race regulations. Hello, Peter.
I think you may be missing the point slightly with regards to the Parish Walk and the headphone situation. I think Ray Cox alluded to rules and regulations that they're operating under, presumably set down by a governing body somewhere, which preclude the use of headphones. And my guess is that might be because they could be used for the competitor receiving coaching or even tactical information during the race, which would be contrary to the rules.
Okay.
So I think that may be at the back of the directive about the ban during the race.
I presume it's a new sort of decision, though, because people have always been able to do it in the past, haven't they?
I'm not really aware of that, but if that's the rules that they're running the race under, then that's the end of the issue, really. If you're taking part in, my sport, for example, I'm involved in archery. We can't wear headphones on the line because we could be receiving information from coaching or whatever, and from the safety issue that we wouldn't hear
instructions.
Safety directives from the judging. So it's not unusual that this type of communication is banned in some sports.
Yeah, allowed in some and not in others. I know that Formula One relies very much on it.
I mean, the cyclists, if you look at the road race, all of the top runners are wired up and they're in constant communication with the teams. But in race walking, and especially on the roads, from the safety angle, of course, it's prohibited. So.
Yeah, fair dues. All right, Peter, thank you very much for calling. Always nice to hear an expert point of view on it. I think Peter's certainly more expert about that than I am. But yes, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, I wonder what kind of coaching you might get if you're doing the parish walk. Walk faster. Oh, okay then. That's the coaching. Go quicker. You're dropping behind. Stu, did you just say that a song was played by Katy Perry and somebody called Skidmark? Surely not. No. Skip Marley. Skip Marley. I assume it's something to do with the Bob Marley dynasty. I don't know. So it's a good name, though, for a rock band, isn't it? Skid with a Y, maybe, and Marks with an X. Yeah, good band name, that. Earphones, Stu. I think walkers are safer doing the parish walk with earphones in. Other road users know the route, and there are loads of them and marshals. Earphones should be banned for walkers all of the times. The number of walkers walking in the middle of the narrow roads, completely oblivious to everything else, is ridiculous, although it is fully funny watching them jump when they realise, says Jane. You're a bad person. You're not going to heaven at all making walkers jump, Jane. I'll keep a seat warm for you. What else? Stu, is this a case of covering one's backside? If anything happens, it's down to the organisers, and that's the blame game these days, says Jimmy. Might be something to do with that. Stu, it has to be a choice if the individual they practice with them on, is that going to be banned as well? Asks Buster. I don't know. I don't know how much the authority the race organisers have got outside of the actual event itself. I think they can tell you what you can and can't do during the event, but outside of that, I wouldn't have thought so. What someone does when they're on their own is up to them. Right, that kind of doesn't it? This is from Ray. That confirms what I thought. What somebody does when they're on their own is up to them, and if something happens, they have to deal with the consequences. An organised event is something else, and personally I think this ban is a good decision. If something happened in the parish walk as a result of, say, headphones, then no doubt the event would end up being pulled. Thank you, Ray. Good points. Are motorcyclists allowed to listen to music or the radio, says David H? Yes, they are. Either through little speaker things in the helmet, which are almost like headphones in many ways, I suppose, or you can get sort of motorbike radios that are just very loud. With regard to the parish walk, I think it's the same old story. The event's insurers covering the backsides and the world's suing culture. But I do think walkers are probably in less danger en masse in the parish walk than they are out on their own during training, says Liz. Don't forget, people are on the limit, and they also have raised adrenaline, tired, in pain, so the decisions are not always as logical as they would make sitting comfortably in the office or studio, or even ambling along the road for a couple of miles. Getting to the finish becomes their priority, and their awareness of their own safety lessens. I've walked and driven behind athletes with earphones, gaily marching along without a care in the world. Other road users. That from Mike. Thank you, Michael. Michael's, I think, a walker, so knows all about it. It's a UK Athletics Association ruling, Stu. They are the equivalent of the ACU to bike racing. The event is held under their rules. That from Paul. There you go. That explains it then. How are they going to enforce it? Chop their ears off, maybe. Well, in some Middle Eastern states, that might be the answer. Parish Walk and UK Jobsworth. For some entrants, it's serious. For others, a chance to raise funds for local charities. Banning headphones will take some of the fun out of the event. Nanny State once more rears its ugly head, says Peter. Right, okay. I was driving behind a lady walker last week, and she was totally unaware that I was behind her because she was wearing earphones. This was on a quiet country single-track road. If I'd met her on a bend, it could have been fatal. There are some people that drive these lanes faster than is safe. It's dangerous to use these in both ears. Yeah, okay, well, maybe that's a compromise, to just have, one ear in or something like that. I don't know. Here we go. How about a compromise? One earbud in to listen to your chosen music story, etc., and one out to listen to traffic, which is what I do when I'm on a busy road. That's kind of answered the question, I think. Stu, when I'm out stomping, I only use one earbud. Simple, can still keep one ear open. There you go, you see. And Mark says, I refer to my email yesterday. I would refer, my learned gentleman, to the comments made yesterday in this very place. I refer to my email yesterday about nanny interfering. It's not the place of the organisers to tell me what a person can or can't do on a public road. You might have entered their event, but they've got no right to control your behaviour during that time. Well, I disagree, actually, Mark. I think they have. How you choose to do the walk is your own business. There is such a thing. Such a thing is quite unenforceable. There are no statutes that can be used to impose this nonsense. I think you're probably wrong about that. Once more, there's no great problem of bodies being strewn all over the roads during the event. It's not in response to an unprecedented outbreak of carnage at the previous event, just another intellectually poorly thought out notion by the organisers. A message to the organisers is to leave people alone. One contributor has just said that wearing earphones is a real menace. Really? In what manner is it a real menace, or is it just the contributor trying to justify nonsense with yet more exaggeration? Those with sense should be more determined to push back against this ever-creeping stupidity of disproportionate measures against risk. There's a difference between hazard, the event that could occur, and the likelihood of it actually happening that a lot of people badly trained in risk assessment don't understand. Health and safety law is for businesses with 5 or more employees only. Anything else is the business of the individual, not fools who don't understand these simple facts. As for tactical information, again, get a sense of proportion. It's a fun run. So many people are so keen to obey this nonsense, it amazes me, says Mark. Okay. Stu, what's that fella on? Which fella? When? That from Dave C. I'm listening from Ohio. This is from Chris. Whatever happened to personal responsibility? I think that it should be up to each of us to look out for our own safety. Yes. Your first thought of a song to listen to while walking would be Staying Alive. That sounds like a good one. Sentiment for we men of a certain age. I'm 57, can still think I can exert like I was still 27. Okay. It's cold and blowy in northwest Ohio, in case anybody was wondering. Thanks for getting in touch, Chris. What about Formula One earphones? Different thing altogether. Yes, you see, they're not listening out for pedestrians in Formula One, are they? Most motorcyclists use earplugs. Yes, but they just, the sound, don't they? They just deaden the sound. They don't get rid of it completely. The earplugs just get rid of the droning engine noise or whatever. Attenuators, I think that's the word I was looking for. I think they attenuate noise, but don't stop you hearing other things. Stu, do you do the arm movements to that when walking? Says Graham. What, staying alive? Well, I don't walk, so no, but if I did, I would. I earmuffs allowed. I'll now be doing the walk as I normally do it for fun, and I can't listen to music. I refuse to be dictated to. That from Pete. I refuse to be told how to walk. Stu, the no earphone rule is what it means. Walkers may be disqualified if not adhering to the rule. That from Alan. Yes, I think that's a valid point. What happens if somebody wants to take part but is totally deaf? I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but I mean, they're not flagrantly hitting the rules, are they? Flouting the rules. If they're deaf, then you would imagine that there are measures in place for people who've got various disabilities. So I don't think it's a reason to say, no, you can't do it. Parish Walk is an official race and as such has rules governing it. If you don't like the rules, don't enter. Yep, that's where it is. That's, I think, where I disagreed with Mark earlier, who said that they can't tell people what to do. I think they can if they want to take part. How can it be the person's own choice? If an accident did occur due to wearing headphones, it's not only the walker that may be hurt. What about the consequences for the driver? It could have a devastating effect on them and any witnesses. Absolutely, yeah, agree with all those comments.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are concerns over work permit exemptions justified? Talked about work permits earlier in the week. A move to relax work permit rules has been described as accepting exploitation by a union boss. Eric Holmes from Unite has raised serious concerns about the new 6-month scheme for the island's hospitality sector. Is this a real concern? Do you think that people are going to be exploited by this change to the regulations, or is it all being blown out of proportion by the union to just swell its own membership? Are the exemptions needed? Stu, this latest exemption is disgusting. The work permit system has been dismantled sector by sector. Loads of people have jobs but can't get more hours. Skelly should hang his head in shame. Why? I don't quite see the point there. I mean, if you're employing people and they want more hours and you've got more hours to give, it makes perfect sense to give them more hours rather than try and recruit somebody new. Surely if the employer is going to recruit somebody new to fill in those hours rather than give them to an existing employee, then doesn't that suggest that the existing employee isn't particularly valued or particularly good at the job? There's enough exploitation going on in the Isle of Man. Don't hear the union doing anything about that. Hospitality always was low paid. What's all the fuss about permits? These jobs were exempt in the 80s, so it's a return to that. Okie dokie. Let's go to the lines. We've got Buster on. Hi, Buster.
Yeah, I mean, normally I would be against it, but I followed this closely.
Yeah.
And Rob Collister has got full control of it. And for example, he's required that they have to have a full contract of employment, they have to have a minimum wage, and he's set in place the safeguards that should prevent anybody from being exploited.
Yeah, and they've got to have got experience in what they're going to be doing as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, when you read through it, I don't think you could have drawn up a better agreement.
Yeah.
But it is down now for people to enforce that. It's a little niggle factor in that a lot of our students come back in the summer, and a lot of them work in the hotels, and I just hope that can still happen.
Yes.
Yes, down to Rob Collister, definitely. If it wasn't somebody like him or somebody had really control of it, then no.
Well, the thing that you mentioned about and a few people mentioned it when we talked about it earlier in the week about kids coming back from university for the summer and looking for a summer job, and they might be adversely affected by this. Again, I would have thought that most employers on the Isle of Man would rather give the jobs to local families. But, what it does mean is that the employer has maybe got a bigger pool of people to look at and can therefore get the best people for the job.
Yeah, and don't forget, Stu, he still has to register with the work permit people, and he has to justify his reasons why.
Yeah.
With the spotlight being on us, and I think because it's great to see that there is a shortage in that market, because that what tells us that there is demand.
Oh, there is, definitely, yeah. In my small way, I've noticed over the last couple of years, it's really, really hard to get good staff. Really hard. And you would think it would be dead simple, that there'd be a million people who could do that, who were looking for work, and that's not been my experience. Certainly, it's been really difficult.
No, it's not mine either, Stu, because, I used to go out a lot at night time to restaurants and that, and they were really, really struggling to get staff.
Yeah.
But, I think that's increased, but that really puts up a great flag that the market is pretty healthy.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Let's keep our fingers crossed as far as that's concerned. Good stuff. Thanks, Buster. Thanks for calling. If you'd like to have a say about this, then don't be shy. Do what Buster did. Give me a call on 66 13 68. Stu, work permits were exempt in the 70s and 80s. We don't have minimum age either. It's voluntary. Minimum age, what? I'm not quite sure. The government should scrap all permits, says somebody else. Work permits, don't understand what the problem is. Some of the staff have been coming over to the island for summer work since the beginning of our tourism industry. Time was that they came from Scotland and Ireland. Now it's Eastern Europe. I feel the union manager's concerned that they won't be union members. That's from Rose. It's funny, actually. I listened to that interview with an open mind, but I kind of got a similar feel about it. Permits are discretionary, and if you're local and not qualified enough to work certain jobs, tough. The government should train the locals up and invest in them if they want to be trained up and do those jobs. That's the thing, and not everybody does, of course. Does Mr. Holmes not realise this is how tourism always worked in the island? Waitresses, etc., always came here from Scotland and Ireland and had a good summer's work. A few might stay over, but most went back home in September. Don't understand this problem, says Liz. The new work permit situation is flawed. Seasonal staff on permits may wish to stay on the island, and on checking EU employment laws, they would still be eligible for benefits at the end of the employment. Hang on, when I moved to the Isle of Man in 97, you couldn't get any benefits for 5 years, and so unless that's changed. Also, the hotels are only busy during race weeks and during the quieter times. Hotels and B&Bs put the staff on very short hours, allowing for the staff to claim in-work benefits. Again, I don't think they would be eligible. At the same time, due to the pay being at minimum rates, no national insurance contributions get paid by the employer. Until guarantees are given that a person can get a full week's pay to live on, then the problem with staffing will remain and subsidised by the rest of us, says Colin. It must have changed, Colin. I mean, if that's your understanding of it, it certainly isn't mine. And I don't know which one of us is right, to be honest, but somebody who's listening might well know. When I moved to the island in 97, you couldn't claim any benefits at all for 5 years, and you had to have a work permit for 5 years if you wanted to work, and unless that's changed. Stu, you and the government don't listen. Okay. The days of full-time work is over until the government puts in place that national insurance contributions by employers is paid on earned earnings. Then the national insurance scam will continue. Yeah, the only thing that I would say about that, and you're not the first person to suggest that, why doesn't government do something about it? We've had people moaning for ages about supermarkets employing people on 0 hours contracts or whatever, and short-term contracts, and employing 2 or 3 people part-time rather than one person full-time to try and get around the national insurance thing. It's not a scam if that's the system, and if people are bothered about it, why doesn't the government do something about it? Now, it might be something as simple as the fact that if somebody's in part-time employment, it lifts them off the unemployment register as far as the government's concerned, and that makes the politicians look good. It might be something as simple as that, I don't know. But if this is a real problem of national insurance being escaped by people, by big employers, then I think you've got to be careful not to use words like evasion. Then why doesn't the government do something about it? There must be a reason. Robin Peel called. They get much less in wages in their own countries. They come here and work and send the money to the families in their home countries. Well, it's their money. It's up to them to do what they want. They're quite happy with what they're getting. They're definitely not to be exploited at all. And a lot end up staying here permanently. Well, yeah, fine. As long as they've got a good work ethic and they get stuck into things. And I think an awful lot of people do have that kind of work ethic that come over and need work permits. In fact, a young Manx girl applied for a job at a well-known supermarket. She was offered 4 hours a day but could choose to work mornings or afternoons. She replied that she wanted to work both to get a full week. Answer, sorry, we only want part-time workers. Okay, I mentioned before that sometimes 2 part-time workers are better for a business than 1 full-time, in that if one of them's off, the other can cover. Whether that's anything to do with it or whether or not it's something to do with wages or national insurance or whatever, I don't know. Who wants to be trained up to a job that offers 0 contract at minimum pay rate? Would you? I've worked for less than minimum pay in the past. I'm old-fashioned. I'll do anything to work to make a living rather than claim benefits, and which is why I drove a taxi, 1999, something like that, I think. And if you look at it, I was earning far less than minimum wage doing that as well. But, I'm qualified to be benevolent dictator for life of the world, but I've got no qualifications in terms of getting work apart from things that I've got experience at. So I was a taxi driver for a while. So, yes, I would be prepared to work if it was that or claim benefits. Good luck to people coming over here, paying travel accommodation, living expenses over the summer. It's probably possible for students, but others may not find it worth their while, says Phil. Well, but the market will decide that, won't it, Phil? Brian called. What happened to all the Irish girls who used to come over for the summer season? There used to be hundreds of them every year. They worked in the hotels on the prom. They went back at the end of the season unless they'd met a partner here. Okay. It appears it's just not the hospitality industry that requires staff. It seems to be all over. Poses the question, is the Isle of Man as a whole not attractive enough? When we move here in 85, no benefits, couldn't get an office job or a shop job, and 0 hours employers escaped paying sick and national insurance. Yeah, that's more like it. Stu, I think you're right about work permits not being able to claim for 5 years. It was for me in 2004, says Claire. Good. I never remember your job being advertised. Do you know? I do. Well, your version of it, of course, is that I landed here in 1997 off the King Orry with my partner, and the governor was here to meet us with the red carpet and a marching band to say, oh, come on in, Stu, we'll find you some work without, behave yourself. Not long after I arrived here, Manx Radio was running adverts saying that they wanted new presenters and that people could audition. That was how I first got into Manx Radio, I think. And I came up doing just doing a Saturday night rock show for a while. What you find, and it's like I've said before, if you're prepared to work at something, then people recognise that and hopefully give you more work. And that was the case as far as Manx Radio is concerned. But I was always prepared to do other things as well. So, you need to get this out of your mind that I'm any special case. Bob called. It's a good idea to bring staff in from elsewhere. The only reason the hobs have ever been a problem is because it's unsociable hours, the hobs. When everybody else is having fun, they're working. But that's always been the case in hospitality. And there are lots of jobs like that. Sounds like the union is itching for a scrap because government rolled over every time they shouted in the past, and they're going to want to stamp their mark on this government. I hope the government stands up to them and don't roll over, especially over issues like public sector pensions. Thank you, Bob. I think he was talking about jobs, was he, rather than hobs. The reason government won't actually on the scam of only employing part-time workers is because it gives a false figure on unemployment levels. Predictive text. If a hotel recruits from off-island, then the employee becomes an invited worker and can claim benefits under EU legislation. It won't apply to just taking a person off the local streets. If a hotel recruits from off-island, then the employee becomes an invited worker and can claim benefits under EU legislation, but we're not governed by the EU. I don't quite... Again, I'm not doubting what you're saying. I'm sure that you're genuine, but I'm not sure about that at all. George called Rob Callister's doing this work permit exemption when the condition that they have 12 months experience on the job. But your caller's just mentioned students coming home from university. They certainly won't have 12 months experience. So with the returning students... Will the returning students have the experience in the jobs that the employers are looking for? Will they end up using the work permitted staff anyway?
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or get your thoughts to us via Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag #MRTalkingHeads. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, why not suggest it by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.